Hello, I'm the prevention educator here at S.A.F.E. I think I have such a special job because I get to do prevention work with students in the area, specifically about teen dating violence. Throughout this presentation, I will share some real examples from these sessions. I've gained so much perspective and knowledge from them, and I really hope that this is reflected well in this presentation. Dating abuse can be an emotional and challenging topic to learn about. Please take care of yourself however that looks like for you. Have a drink nearby, take some time to stretch, practice breathing, step out for a moment, keep your camera off, whatever you need. Additionally, I am here to support you, and I'm happy to talk more in depth with those who would like to reach out. Think back to when you were a teenager. How did the adults in your life treat dating? How did they respond to teen relationships? Were they supportive, intimidating, informative, maybe strict? How would that have affected you disclosing abuse to those adults? I want us to keep this reflection in mind as we move throughout this workshop. Teen dating violence is a pattern of physical, psychological, or sexual abuse, harassment, coercion, or stalking behaviors used by one person to exert power and control over another person in the context of a past or present romantic relationship amongst teenagers. This term dating violence usually refers to an abusive relationship between two teens, but it is also frequently used to describe when a person under 18 is being abused by an adult quote unquote partner. And air quotes are used here because teenagers cannot actually consent to those kinds of relationships. Additionally, every generation of teens uses different words and different norms for dating and its stages. So in the classroom, I teach that dating refers to this whole process from beginning to end. From being interested in someone, the talking phase, dating, being a couple, and even breaking up. Additionally, we talk a lot in class about how dating abuse happens in person and through technology, which is an important distinction once we learn some statistics in a second. Even if young people in your life aren't experiencing teen dating violence, then a young person they know is going through it. And the young people you know might actively be trying to help and support their friends through it. Dating violence can and does begin as early as 6th grade. A study by the Philadelphia Children's Hospital showed rates of victimization from abusive relationships begin as early as 13 and rise sharply between the ages of 15 to 17 and continue to rise during ages 18 to 22. We want to start having conversations with young people as early as middle school and modeling positive behaviors for youth even younger than that because of these statistics. Youth are entering into relationships and experiencing abuse within those relationships. As adults, we might dismiss this as shallow high school drama or even bullying, but it is abuse with very serious consequences. And 1 in 3 teens will experience dating violence. Females between the ages 16 to 24 are roughly 3 times more likely than the rest of the population to be abused by an intimate partner. And teens who experience dating violence are at a much higher risk for depression, substance abuse, eating disorders, STIs, and further victimization in relationships as adults. Half of youth who've been victims of dating violence or rape attempt suicide at some point in their lives. Also, 65 to 75% of teenagers that have been in romantic relationships report experiencing digital dating abuse, which is a staggering number. Teens view a lot of behaviors like excessive texting, location tracking, and phone checks as normal and don't always recognize how these might not be normal. Also, 81% of parents don't believe that teen dating violence is a problem. So let's think back to our reflection question from the beginning and the impact that this belief might have. One of the most devastating statistics to me is that 2 out of 3 teens in abusive relationships will never tell anyone. Not their friends, parents, siblings, teachers, or advocates. Also, some teens are at greater risk than others. Female students experienced higher rates of physical and sexual dating violence than male students. Students who identify as LGBTQ or those who are unsure of their gender identity experience higher rates of physical and sexual dating violence compared to students who identify as heterosexual or cisgendered. My question for you is, have you ever talked to youth about dating violence? And if so, what was your experience? When talking to teens, it is best to give them tools to identify abusive relationships and questions they can ask themselves about relationships. Rather than just asking them if they experience dating violence, it is good to ask concrete questions or give them a list of concrete questions they can ask themselves later. Teenagers don't always know what an abusive relationship looks like as they are figuring out what relationships look like in general. They might not know what does and does not constitute as abuse in a relationship. We need to provide them clear instructions and definitions as advocates, older siblings, parents, mentors. The red flags for dating violence echo a lot of what we know about domestic violence among adults, but we also need to talk about these warning signs in relation to teen relationships specifically. For example, social isolation. If a young person is being kept from spending time with their friends or their family. Harmful criticism. If someone a young person is dating is constantly berating them, accusing them of not doing anything right. Constant blame. If every fight is their fault, if their partner's hardships are always their fault, that's a huge red flag. Harmful anger. This is when anger looks like aggression and intimidation and causing fear. Manipulative jealousy. I hear a lot from teens, especially our young ladies, that this is sexy or that this is a sign of love and commitment. They think if someone loves me, then why wouldn't they fight for me? If someone loves me, why wouldn't they be jealous? Part of this is from the stuff that they see on social media, our movies, our music. It is important to remind teens that this is concerning behavior. Intentional sabotage. So this is things like hiding your car keys so you can't go to work, hiding college admission letters, telling you where to apply to college. Excessive control. This looks like a relationship where one person controls how the other dresses, eats, behaves, where they spend their time as a couple, what activities they're allowed to do. Strategic intensity. This is where people make a relationship move very fast. Meeting parents very quickly, saying I love you super soon in the relationship, moving from casual to committed fast. These are all red flags. At the bottom here, I have some questions listed that students receive during our educational sessions and are prompted to talk about. Sometimes it's really obvious when one of these questions makes teens' wheels turn, and some of these questions lead to really great discussions. As a general rule of thumb, as adults, we need to operate from a curious and non-judgmental point of view and ask open-ended questions like these. So how do we talk to teens about it? First, we want to think about setting the tone. Serious doesn't have to mean joyless. You don't have to dread these conversations. I know someone whose parents very openly dreaded these conversations, and instead of talking about it, they would leave books in their children's bedrooms to avoid having to talk about it altogether. These talks should be taken seriously and can be really hard to initiate, but they can still be approachable and lighthearted. These should also be ongoing conversations. It really shouldn't look like a tough one and done where we sit down and have an intense 3-hour conversation to tell a teen everything they could ever need to know. That would feel scary and like too much information in too little time. We want these conversations to feel approachable so that our youth feel comfortable coming to us on an ongoing basis. As adults, we can get really focused on the delivery, which can change the tone. I know I am like this. I am just such a nerd about this stuff. I often get so caught up that I end up talking to teens like I'm giving a lecture to college students. We might be so focused on getting it right that we come across abrasive or severe, which can make kids feel like they're getting in trouble. If we think about when we were teens, we might not have liked a conversation where an adult or a parent made us feel confused or judged or like the stakes were really high. We don't want to turn teens' lack of knowledge and understanding into an act of wrongdoing. Unless there's a discussion where a teen is sharing a personal experience of abuse, the conversation doesn't need to be too serious. And outside of that, the conversation can be informal and fun. You'll also want to consider the setting of the conversation beforehand. Maybe a school basketball game or a dinner with younger siblings around isn't the right time. But it can be in the car, on the way to the store. It can also be very effective to talk in the car or on a walk where the teen doesn't have to look at you the whole time. Maybe pick somewhere you both love to be. Maybe this could be while shopping, so you can conversate and do another task at the same time. Of course, this all depends on the context and the structure of your family and your relationships. Of course, some of the more serious topics need to be discussed during these conversations, like what abusive behaviors are, or what sexual violence looks like, or how to find resources in your community. But it can still be a positive conversation about fun topics. In class, we do exercises where we identify how we want to be treated in a relationship and how we want to treat the person that we're dating before we ever define abuse. This leads to really fun conversations about how someone you're dating might make you feel loved or safe or amused. Let's think about conversation openers. In the classroom, students like to talk about TikTok trends or stuff people are talking about on social media and current events. So maybe ask about your teen's friends or their classmates' dating experiences. Maybe you can even share pieces of your own life story, which might show them that you're a safe, relatable person that they can be vulnerable with. Dating relationships are meant to be fun and healthy experiences, so you want your conversations to reflect that. In general, there are some basic things we want teens to know, basic conversation topics, such as definitions of terms that we share, the fact that relationships exist on a spectrum of healthy to unhealthy to abusive, what communication in a relationship can look like, and so much more. Other topic suggestions are to talk about what empathy is, how to show someone that you care, how to set boundaries. It can also be really great to open the floor and let them ask you questions about what they want to know. Young people are exposed to so much through media and their peers, they probably know and understand a lot more than we think they do, which is something my students remind me of often. So I try to reframe our conversations as collaborations, where together we gather all of this information and experiences that we have collectively, and we dump it out and we examine it together. Moving on, this next slide might be the most challenging to discuss out of this whole presentation. Take a moment to take care of yourself if you're feeling heavy. During our sessions, students have been given the opportunity to write an anonymous note. Everyone turns in a half sheet of paper with a question or a confession or maybe even something goofy. I want youth voices to have a real presence in this work overall, and especially when I'm educating other adults on what kids experience. This exercise also gives me a reminder that it is the youth that I see every day that could be experiencing teen dating violence right now. Let's just take a second here. We want teens to know the positive impact healthy relationships can have on them. It's always a good idea to ask the young person you're engaging with what they think is a sign of a healthy relationship. Some examples might be curiosity, open communication, time apart, trust. On the right, there is a list of relationship inventory questions that anyone could use to decide if their relationship is healthy. When talking to teens, we can refer to questions like this or come up with some of our own, like, does my partner encourage me to grow? Do we share goals for the future? Can I be myself around them? Do I accept them for who they are? Is there equal give and take? Is my life better with them in it? Or does our time together have meaning? Can you come up with any of your own questions? As mentioned earlier, all relationships exist on the spectrum of healthy to unhealthy and abusive. The differences can sometimes be hard to pick apart. When we're growing up and starting to date, we don't necessarily categorize relationships like this. For example, if we watch our parents fight when we're young, we probably don't think this is an abusive relationship, but rather we think people in relationships fight and this is what relationships look like. As we grow and we gain more experiences and exposures to relationships, we might then be able to do this categorization better. One really prevalent unhealthy behavior for youth today is the complete lack of digital privacy. If a young person in a relationship is asked by their partner to give them their phone, then the young person might believe that they need to hand it over to prove that they love their partner. This strikes me as an unhealthy relationship dynamic and maybe even abusive, but it is normal for teens. Of everything we talk about in class, this is the one piece I receive the most pushback against. So if you have a young person in your life, I would really encourage you to talk to them about digital privacy and what that looks like for them when they're in a relationship, so they know how to navigate it when they get into one. We can ask them things like, how would you feel if your parent went through your phone? Then, how about a friend? Does it prove something in those relationships? If so, what? If not, why? How can we compare that to a dating relationship? These are things they need to think about. So, what is healthy communication? What does it look like to young people? How much communication is too much? Are they okay with their partner sending them 30 messages in a row, or would that be unhealthy? If your teens communicate mostly online with a partner, maybe they're long distance or they talk through dating apps, Snapchat, texting, etc., then we especially need to talk about things like tone of voice. You can't always tell what someone's tone is when you're texting with them. Make sure your teens are taking time with the person they are dating to get to know them, to talk in person, to get a better idea of what their partner is like, what they mean, and how they come across. We can encourage teens to seek clarity, or else they might fumble into a lot of accidental disagreements. Texting and image sharing. It is happening. It is really important that we do remind young people of the dangers of this. Even when you love someone and you think you'll be together forever, maybe it isn't best to send a picture that could outlive us. Remind them in a non-judgmental manner that there are serious risks and consequences for sending and receiving explicit pictures. Conflict in relationships. Healthy conflict exists. Young people might believe that there is no such thing as healthy conflict, which could be true to an extent. Maybe early in a relationship or non-stop conflict, for example. But we can remind them there are collaborative, healthy, and good ways to work through conflict with a partner. Also something we can demonstrate in our relationships with our teens by engaging in healthy conflict with them when it arises. We can also simply model respectful communication in general. For example, setting boundaries for phones at the dinner table. What does it look like for them? Ask them how healthy conflict might be able to exist in their relationships. Emotional and verbal abuse. Let's remind our teens that they deserve respect. They are worthy of love, dignity, and respect. They deserve a healthy and fun relationship. Let's talk about empathy. This looks like speaking up for others. We need to encourage our youth to challenge sexist norms, to shut down rape jokes and minimization of violence. It's okay for our teens to tell someone a joke isn't funny. Even if they're embarrassed, it is okay to demonstrate shutting something down and modeling those boundaries. Also, when it comes to understanding other points of view, ask what they notice about the people they know. Work on identifying how other people are feeling. Maybe as kids tell gossip from school, or as you watch TV, ask questions about the subject matter like, and how do you think that makes those people feel? Sharing your own feelings and being honest. We can say things like, I'm stressed right now, I have a big deadline at work, I'm sorry if I'm being grumpy. Also, we can model positive connections for our teens. Give your full attention in conversations. Put your phone away, look at them, let them know you're actually invested. Being kind to service workers. Model healthy connections with people for your young person. You are showing them how to behave and respond to frustration, tense situations, etc. For example, a server messing up an order. Lastly, tell your young person how amazing they are. We can say things like, I have noticed how supportive you are of your friends. I'm so proud of you. Make them feel seen for the work they are doing. It will go a long way. The goal of talking to teenagers about healthy relationships is to build connection. We want them to feel seen, heard, and valued. They won't remember everything you talk about, and you won't be able to teach them everything. But we can lay the foundation for a relationship where they know they can turn to us in a moment of crisis. I really love this quote from an organization called Love is Respect. Maintaining mutual trust depends on you demonstrating that you're trustworthy. That means respecting their decision making, even when you disagree with them. You can't force them to trust you, and you can't live their lives, including decisions about their relationships. Before diving into these conversations about dating and teen dating violence, check in with yourself about your emotions and your stress level. Are you in the right state of mind to address concerns, to learn, to teach, to show empathy, or to challenge a misled belief? And clean your side of the street. We need to admit mistakes or times that we've needed to grow. Again, be honest. We need to acknowledge there are things we needed to do some growth for and that we have made mistakes and learned from them in the past. This demonstrates behavior change and positive relationships. Do as I say, not as I do. We are retiring this phrase. This phrase does not encourage honesty and accountability. Be accountable and open to learning and changing. How can we expect that of young people if we're not also willing to do the work? Next, be aware of your biases. Try to check them before conversations. Be aware of them going into those conversations. Don't assign motive to your teen's behavior before asking them what it is. There are a lot of reasons they might be doing something that you notice. And last, know your resources and your referral options. Youth do have access to safe place services, such as counseling, shelter in some cases, and legal advocacy. To cultivate relationships with young people in our lives, I want to center 3 basic principles. The first is curiosity. Teenagers often feel like adults don't take them seriously, so it is important to ask non-judgmental questions that demonstrate that we value what they have to say. We can say things like, "Tell me more," or "How do you feel about that? What is going on in your internal world? Let me get to know you." Validation. Especially if a teen is going through a tough relationship or a rocky friendship, don't dismiss that situation. Try to avoid phrases like, "It'll be better when you're older," or "This is just a phase," or anything of the like. These problems aren't problems for the future. They are happening right now. We can say stuff like, "It's normal to feel that way. I get it, and I believe you." Lastly, collaboration. Let's focus on working together to find solutions, especially if they are disclosing abuse or an issue in their relationships. Don't rush to fix everything on your own. Ask them what they have tried already, what they want to do. We can say things like, "What do you think about trying X, Y, and Z?" Make sure the young people you love and work with are agents of change for their own lives. So much of being a teenager is attempting to develop autonomy while struggling with feeling like you don't have autonomy over your own life. So let's focus on being a person that gives some of that autonomy to them safely. Remind them, "I am here to help you figure this out and explore options, and I'm here to help you access safety in the best way for you." How we respond to disclosures of abuse is incredibly important. From my own experiences, young people do want to tell someone what they've gone through. Days where I presented in 7 classes, I might have 4, 5, or 6 conversations with students afterward. They are looking for a safe person to give them the opportunity to talk about it, to believe them and support them. It doesn't necessarily get easier having these conversations, especially if a young person we love is personally disclosing to us. So here are some tips on responding. The first is to believe them. This is key. Say the words, "I believe you." Trust that they aren't making it up, and don't push back against what they are saying with phrases like, "Are you sure? Did they really mean it that way?" No. It is our obligation to not shy away from the harsh truths they are telling us. It is our responsibility to make them feel like they can open up. Say things like, "I'm sorry that happened, and I believe you." Second, let's promote overall safety, not specific outcomes. We don't want to just give them a quick, simple fix because then we become another controlling person in their life. We need to focus on safety and solutions that will make sense for them. In high school, it isn't always easy when you know you will see your abusive partner in class the next day, or maybe your lockers are close by, or you're on the same sports team. It is complicated. When young people tell you that it is complicated, believe them that it is complicated. So What can we do to keep them safe while they still might be in constant contact with someone that was abusing them? We need to ask what they think a solution might be, or what the end goal looks like for them. Sometimes it might be switching classes or getting a therapist. Maybe they don't want a specific outcome right now, but they just want to be heard. We won't know unless we ask. Last, as a mandated reporter, be transparent and collaborative. It is really challenging to gain the trust of young people, and it can take a long time, especially with teenagers. If we have to report, it could really damage any sort of rapport or trust that we have built with that young person. If it is a situation where you need to report, be collaborative and approach it as a team. Whether it is reporting with them or telling them what you will have to do in a play-by-play, try to do it with their blessing, which will not always be possible. Also, I always tell youth that I am a mandated reporter ahead of time, and I remind them every time we meet. This allows them to navigate our relationship and interactions fully informed. Some additional tips for these conversations and responding to disclosures are to admit when you don't know something and propose learning together. It is a disservice to make something up or pretend like you do know the answer. Take their concerns and hopes seriously. They are not half-baked adults, they are fully formed teenagers. They are a full person right now experiencing real experiences. Take them seriously and show them respect as a human. Last, pause the conversation if it gets too tough. Maybe you need a moment to breathe and then reconvene. Safety planning is the process of planning ahead of time for how to achieve the highest level of safety possible throughout an abusive relationship, including while that relationship is ending and after it has ended. Safety planning includes brainstorming for safety measures that one can take in regards to safe locations to interact with the abuser, safe locations to flee after an incident, identifying people the survivor feels comfortable calling in an emergency, maintaining access to necessary documents, identification, bank cards, access to transportation, access to working phones, and other basic needs such as clothing, food, and so much more. Safety planning for teens can include all of these things, as well as additional considerations for how to stay safe during school, at extracurriculars, and last but not least important, while online. Potential measures a teen can take to stay safe at school include sticking with friends during passing periods, using single-stall bathrooms, talking to administrators about making a no-contact plan. This is an option to students, and it can be especially helpful for teen survivors to include another parent or a trusted adult in this process. Ask your school about their teen dating violence policy or related policies. Maybe your teen visits an after-school center or plays a sport. Potential measures they can take to stay safe include making sure their legal guardians or other safe adults know their plans for the day, traveling to and from with trusted teammates or friends, and working amongst parents and coaches or other staff to adjust practice schedules, locations, and more. Controlling and monitoring a date through technology is the most common type of digital dating abuse. Things teens can do to protect themselves online include saving and documenting aggressive or threatening messages, reporting, blocking, muting, or unfollowing users, changing passwords and login information, changing location settings, and asking their friends to check in with them before their friends post something that could reveal their location. Advocates are available to safety plan with survivors via our 24/7 hotline and in person by appointment. Teens are eligible for Safe Place services without parent notification at 14 years old. However, some services may require parent involvement, such as getting a protection order for a minor. Teens and their families don't have to respond to dating violence alone. Safe Place can help. Ending teen dating violence takes all of us. The work is not for teenagers alone. It will take all of us choosing and modeling healthy relationships and behaviors. We all need to work to shift the culture away from victim blaming. We have to hold people who abuse accountable for changing their behavior and beliefs. Most importantly, we need to commit to modeling, education, and discussing healthy relationship dynamics and skills across the lifespan. To wrap up, I want to circle back to our reflection in the beginning. With a new understanding of the prevalence of teen dating violence and the tools for responding, how might you navigate your relationships with your young people differently? Thank you for listening, and I am available for any questions, comments, or concerns via the information listed on the screen.